A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deploying National Guard troops in Illinois without the consent of Governor J.B. Pritzker. And another judge has ordered federal law enforcement agents not to interfere with peaceful protests or the journalists covering them. At least that's the way things stand as we record this podcast at midday Friday, October 10th, 2025. Things could change by the time you hear this. In the meantime, from Capitol News, Illinois, I'm Peter Hancock, and this is Capitol Cast. Hello, and welcome to Capitol Cast, a regular podcast of Capitol News, Illinois. The showdown between the Trump administration and the state of Illinois reached a crescendo this week. At issue is President Donald Trump's long-standing crusade to crack down on illegal immigration, even to the point of using military force in cities where protests erupt and/or state and local officials refuse to cooperate. Those actions have met vocal resistance here in Illinois, especially from Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. At one point this week, Trump even suggested that Pritzker and Johnson should be jailed for refusing to protect ICE officers. Here's what Pritzker had to say about that in an interview with MSNBC that was posted on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
All that was prelude to action in two federal courtrooms in Chicago. In one, the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago sued to block the Trump administration from federalizing National Guard troops and deploying them around the Chicago area. And in a second suit, news organizations, along with individual protesters and clergy, sued to block federal law enforcement agencies from using violence and intimidation to break up protests and to shut down news coverage of them. Here to help us unpack all of that are three of my colleagues, reporter Ben Szalinski, our editor-in-chief Jerry Nowicki, and the newest member of the CNI team, Brenden Moore. Brenden, let's start with you. First of all, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Peter. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so you're new to CNI, but you've been a State House reporter for a little while. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from, what you were doing previously?
Yeah, Peter, like you said, I'm new to CNI, but I'm not new to the state government and politics beat. I come from Lee Enterprises, which has newspapers in St. Louis, Bloomington, Decatur, the Quad Cities, and Charleston, Mattoon. I was there for a little under 5 years. And before that, I worked for the State Journal Register, which is the daily newspaper in Illinois' capital city. So I've been around Springfield for a little bit. I'm originally from the northern suburbs of Chicago, but I'm thrilled to be part of the CNI team, and I'm happy to call you guys my colleagues now.
Okay, well, welcome aboard. And in your first appearance on a podcast, we'll talk a little bit about your original hometown. First of all, the National Guard ruling this week, the lawsuit seeking to block the deployment of National Guard troops. The judge has blocked that deployment for the time being. Can you tell us what exactly was in that order?
Yeah, so this is a temporary restraining order that lasts for about 14 days, although it could be extended. Basically, Judge April Perry said that the federal government failed to justify the deployment of National Guard troops to protect ICE facilities and agents as they're conducting their operations. She noted that there really was no evidence of a rebellion, which is kind of the bar for having federal troops on the streets of a place like Chicago, and basically found that the government the government's accounting of the facts on the ground were unreliable, and did not stand up to the evidence that was presented. So basically, the state had said in court that this violates Illinois sovereignty, that this violates the Posse Comitatus Act, which kind of governs the deployment of federal troops for law enforcement. And the judge, at least temporarily, agreed. It's a pause. It's not a final ruling. The Trump administration has already filed an appeal, so this will go up the chain. But I do think it is worth noting that Governor Pritzker has told Illinoisans to basically record everything when it comes to their interactions with federal agents, with ICE, with Border Patrol. And at least in this case and in some of the other cases that we're going to be talking about, it appears that that is having an effect, because we're seeing, some of this evidence as it's presented in court is helping the state prove its case, is helping some of these other defendants prove their cases. So it's just going to be something to watch moving forward.
Okay, and I guess it's worth noting that we've been watching similar dramas unfold in other cities. We all remember the deployment of troops into Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. He has threatened to bring troops into Portland, Oregon, a number of other cities. As far as we can tell right now, are the judges' rulings in Chicago any different from what we've seen happen in other American cities where the same sort of drama's being played out?
No, at least in the Oregon case, it was pretty similar. That the federal government's accounting of the facts on the ground was found not to be very reliable, and but again, that case has been appealed as well. So we'll see, I guess, once it gets to the appellate level, if the pendulum swings back to the other way, and perhaps, we could see this going up maybe to the highest levels of maybe to the Supreme Court even. But we're not there yet. But yes, the Illinois case is not the only case that's going through the system right now.
And I'd add, Brendan, one thing to note about both of those cases is one is a Trump-appointed judge in Oregon and one is a Joe Biden-appointed judge in Chicago. So different views from people appointed by different presidents. I should say similar views from people appointed by different presidents.
Well, while we're waiting for the legal issues to play out, I want to turn to Ben Szalinski to talk a little bit about the politics of all of this. Governor Pritzker and Donald Trump have sort of been at each other's throats for a long time, going back to the COVID-19 pandemic. There's no love lost between these two individuals. How big of a win was this for Pritzker, at least for the time being?
Yeah, at least as of Friday here, it's a pretty big win for the governor. The courts basically upheld the arguments that he has made for over a month now, since the president first suggested sending the National Guard to Illinois. And they sided with the governor in this case, and that, you can't just send the National Guard in without some sort of significant legal precedent that has been met. So, I mean, we've seen Donald Trump's and the Trump administration's position flip-flop on this, because at first it was about, dealing with crime issues in Chicago. And now they deployed the Guard here under the pretext that they're going to protect ICE facilities and Homeland Security personnel. The judges have obviously ruled that that's not required at this point, that the Illinois State Police and local police can handle the job just fine. So far, I mean, the governor has been proved correct, and I think he's getting a lot of, I guess, good national acknowledgement from a lot of people on it as well.
Of course, we all know that Donald Trump is known for holding a grudge. He ran on the platform that I will be your retribution. Is there a potential cost to this? Could he be potentially take out retribution against the governor or the state of Illinois? I mean, we've already seen him cut off federal funds in certain areas. We've seen him cancel federal grants. Any possibility, is there any further retribution he could take against the state or against the governor?
Yeah, I mean, the further retribution is at this point up to whatever Donald Trump can imagine. He's done so many things that a lot of people aren't supportive of in the state of Illinois. He's really targeted the state throughout his entire, was it 9 months now as president in his second term. Obviously, this week we heard that the governor, Donald Trump, suggesting that J.B. Pritzker should be thrown in jail. It's part of their certainly significant escalation in their ongoing war with each other. But I think the difference now is that we've seen in the last couple weeks here that the Trump's Justice Department has brought criminal charges against people who at one point in time crossed up Donald Trump and who he's long held a grudge against. So, I think it's kind of a serious threat in some ways, though, not necessarily a serious threat just because, some of this stuff has appeared very frivolous. So, really how else they could go after J.B. Pritzker or the state of Illinois? We certainly could see more on the budget front. Certainly a significant escalation with this federal troop deployment. I mean, the president has openly floated the Insurrection Act, which would be a major historic escalation in deploying troops in the United States. Chicago is certainly probably in the crosshairs of that. So, whatever way Donald Trump feels like holding his grudge is really up to his imagination.
And of course, playing in the background of all of this, we can't forget about the fact that Governor Pritzker obviously has national political ambitions. Does this help or hurt him on the national stage? I mean, at some point, is Donald Trump just giving J.B. Pritzker a national platform from which to run for president?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now, because Donald Trump is the face of the Democrat resistance to the Trump administration at this point, because it's Pritzker's face on the news every single day and night right now, talking about the ICE deployments, the National Guard deployments in his state. So he's been the most vocal person really since Donald Trump took office, but especially over the last month now, all Donald Trump has really done is given J.B. Pritzker an escalating platform to continue fighting publicly against what he's doing. I don't know that presidential politics is even part of the governor's consideration on this, just because this is so unprecedented in American history. But, if Donald Trump is legitimately worried about J.B. Pritzker as a political foe to a future Republican candidate for president in 2028, it certainly seems like he's helping him, because his name recognition has to be growing throughout the country right now.
Okay, so let's now turn to Jerry Nowicki to talk about the First Amendment lawsuit that was filed by news organizations and protesters. There had been some pretty dramatic stories about protesters being bullied and harassed, being tear gassed. Arrests have been made by masked agents who didn't wear badges or identification. Reporters have been bullied, roughed up while covering the news. How big of a win was this for the journalists and the protesters? And do you think that this is going to stick, that the judge's order will actually have an effect?
I think anytime groups, observers like journalists see it as necessary to intervene with a lawsuit like this, when you win it, it's vindication. It shows that your people have been put in danger simply by expressing their rights. It shows that an unbiased observer has agreed. So it's a pretty big win for the journalism community. Whether it sticks, it's a piece of paper. Do I think all of a sudden ICE and Border Patrol are going to lock arms and it's going to be easy sailing there? I doubt it. But I think what the judges in a lot of these rulings, and more that we haven't even discussed yet, have shown is that the feds just simply aren't reliable narratives of what's happening on the streets of Chicago. There is lots of misinformation being spread in their court filings. The judges have picked that apart. So I think there is, frankly speaking, going to be continued turmoil, especially if the National Guard does eventually arrive. But by all accounts, after Governor Pritzker deployed the Illinois State Police to suburban Broadview, where this ICE processing facility that is a center of a lot of protest is, since he deployed ISP and the local police formed a unified command, things have gone much smoother without any National Guard intervention.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point, and I think Brenden touched on this also, is that at least in these cases, the judges have gone on, or one judge has gone on record saying that she basically does not believe the facts that the government is presenting to justify these actions. And it seems a pretty significant development when federal judges are telling federal prosecutors, we just don't believe the theory behind your case. The information you're bringing here just isn't very credible. And I'm wondering if that has bled over into other lawsuits and prosecutions. I mean, how successful have federal agents been in bringing about other prosecutions of either protesters or the immigrants themselves that are being rounded up?
Yeah, there was a pretty substantial case this week. Another one where a grand jury just declined to indict two individuals that the feds had sought to charge for allegedly assaulting officers. Now you read the probable cause document, and it's essentially that, one of the protesters pushed back at ICE, and then her husband started yelling and charged at ICE, and about alcohol, tobacco, and firearms bureau officer hurt his thumb in the exchange. They charged both of those people, not because they had loaded guns, but they found the people to have legally possessed loaded guns on them, concealed carry, carried within the bounds of Illinois law. And they wrote the press release, 2 armed protesters arrested. Well, those armed protesters were not charged by a federal grand jury. They were not indicted, I should say, and the prosecutor dropped the charges. And, whichever account you read, the Chicago Tribune, Bloomberg Law, or 2 I came across, and their lawyer said, the old saying is that prosecutors can indict a ham sandwich. Well, apparently my clients have less evidence against them than a ham sandwich. And I'm paraphrasing the quote there. But anyway, you get the gist.
Yeah. And there have also been a number of other cases that have been going through the courts. I mean, it's really kind of hard to keep up with all of the legal action and developments that have occurred. Yeah. Have there been any other significant cases besides the 2 that we've been focusing on so far?
Yeah, the sort of a revival of a 2022 consent decree between the Department of Homeland Security and a federal court in Chicago. Essentially, the ruling was ICE is violating that consent decree by committing warrantless arrests. They have these types of warrants to where they start filling them out at the scene after they question someone or as they're questioning someone, which, isn't quite a warrant. The judge said that's a violation of due process, or pardon me, probable cause. And it's problematic, and he said ICE can no longer do that, and he specifically tailored his ruling to 22 individuals, but it's yet another adverse decision to the federal activities in Chicago.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it there for this week on Capital Cast. I do want to end with an editorial note. Normally at this time of the year, we would be talking about the upcoming fall veto session. You may not have noticed, but that is in fact still on. It starts next Tuesday, October 14th. In advance of that, Ben Szalinski recently interviewed both House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch and Senate President Don Harmon about some of the major issues confronting the General Assembly, including Chicago transit funding and future energy policy for the state, just to name a few. We will bring you those interviews in a separate podcast that is scheduled to drop on Monday. So watch for that on your podcast app alerts or at our website, capitalnewsillinois.com. In the meantime, I want to thank Brendan, Ben, and Jerry for being here this week. On behalf of the entire Capital News Illinois team, this is Peter Hancock saying thank you for listening.